Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Chatting the Pictures. I am Kara Finnegan, and I'm a writer, teacher, and historian of photography.
And I'm Michael Shaw, the publisher of Radio Pictures.
Hey, Michael. Do we call this a very special episode? How do you want to set this up for folks today? We have
Yes.
something a little different that I think people will really, really enjoy.
Yeah, it's award season, and we this year today, disorienting. There's so much to look at. No, we're looking at a few pictures that won awards at the Picture of the Year International competition. The award is in its 76th year. It's sponsored by the Missouri School of Journalism. Shameless plug, we actually we used to be called Bag News Notes. We won a multimedia award for excellence in 2010
right.
for a project with Michael Camber looking at military censorship. So I'm really excited to do this, and with the warning that we don't see pictures that are this stellar like on a weekly basis. I mean, newsy, but with this kind of robust nature to it. So anyway, I'm happy to just jump right in.
Yeah, this is a real treat, visual and otherwise, and it's a neat way to also get a chance to look at the work of some of the photojournalists that we might not necessarily see a whole lot of in other contexts, just kind of based on what we do.
Absolutely.
So here is the first image that we're going to talk about from the Pictures of the Year competition.
Yeah, this photo was taken by Fabio Bucciarelli for Yahoo News, and it won first place in the news picture story category, titled "The Border Wall." And the caption reads, "A Central American migrant woman hugs her child at San Diego's beach after crossing the Mexico-U.S. border in Tijuana, Mexico, December 14, 2018.
This photo is really visually compelling for a lot of reasons. And one of the things to me that really just initially jumps out at me is it's very intimate. Not only because you have just the two figures, the mother and the child, but because of the way the photo is framed around the edges, to really isolate them, not in what I would call an objectifying way, but in a sort of careful way, like the visual effect of the blurred sides, the dark colored sides of the photo means that you're kind of just focusing in on this intimate moment between a parent and a child, and so that to me really I think struck me about this photo in particular.
Yeah, I think that there's two. We've seen a lot of border wall imagery, and the question is, why did this one hit home so strongly? Mm-hmm. And I think there's two reasons. One is that it's really framing literally how much the border and immigration politics is now about family, and women and children particularly. And then there's the fact that the winning photo, this winning photo highlights the barbed wire and not the wall. And I think that really speaks to, in a maybe subtle way, about how much, the militarization of the issue has come to the fore. And when you talk about that framing device, what's really amazing to me, and I think your point was great, is that what the photographer is using as the framing device is the physical wall.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's interesting that you said that about militarization, because I'm totally with you. But at the same time, the way the material of the wall itself, right, or of the wire, looks to me like a rosary or a kind of necklace. It seems very delicate and fragile, which might also kind of be in tension with that sense of militarization. And again, it's the way that it's framing, the way that that material is being used to frame what's behind it. And then two, I think the contrast with the very beautiful blue background, right? You get, again, a lot of the border images that we've talked about have this kind of tension between the foreground and the background and the space beyond. And it's my understanding that the space beyond them in this photo is the U.S. side of the border, if I'm not mistaken. And so there's also that sense of what's coming behind.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about the delicacy of the wire, but and that's literally a beautiful point, because whether you pick up on that or not, it really the intimacy between the mother and the child it really transcends all of the politics. And I think that that's also another message, is that these people are on the American side, and what you see is like something that's thoroughly domestic. And that's in our border salon, both Griselda San Martin and Nick Oza, who've been shooting the border a lot, we're talking about really noting whether a photograph was shot from one side of the wall or the other, and what the political dynamics of that were. And the fact that as a photographer, Bucciarelli is on the Mexico side, and we're seeing these people on the other side, and they're calm, and you have this bucolic scene, and not only that, but it's also set in San Diego, which is fortified like crazy. When you talk about the hysteria of the wall, and then this picture is taken in the most fortified spot, which has become kind of ground zero of the issue. It also starts to break down the hysteria in that kind of way also.
That's a really interesting point. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot about where photographs place me as the viewer, where the photographer literally puts us to be able to look. And and I think that is really interesting, that notion that within this fortification, there's still these spaces, these moments of openness. And what do you do with that? Really great photo. Shall we move on?
Sure.
So our next example of one of the pictures of the year is this photograph.
This photo was taken by Lisa Krantz for the San Antonio Express News. It won the Award of Excellence in the newspaper local pictures story category. And as you were alluding to earlier, it's a thrill, and I would say an honor, to be able to talk about a photograph taken by a local news photographer. Local news itself is so endangered, and especially the photo departments of those papers. And to be able to give see this kind of talent, and then to also for us to be able to feature it is something I feel really good about. So the story is titled "Evil Did Not Win," if you remember the mass shooting that was at First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs in Texas in November 2017, the gunman killed 26 people and injured 20 others. He broke into the church itself during a service. It was not only the deadliest mass shooting in Texas history, but also the deadliest at an American place of worship. So this is our edited caption. It reads, "Range manager and head instructor Jamie Correa teaches a principles of active shooter class to members of the safety response team made up of congregants of First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs on June 30, 2018.
Wow, this photo is really incredible.
It really is.
In a lot of ways. And I think if I had to sum it up very quickly, what I would say is that this photo sums up, really encapsulates within itself the debate about guns and gun culture in the U.S. And I mean, the way you're positioned as a viewer to have a response to what is going on in the photo, I think your response to the photo will very much depend upon your personal orientation to the gun debate more generally. And then when you understand that this is a context of people who lost friends and loved ones in that shooting, who have now come together as a group to train in this way, that has a layer on top of it. And so, I don't even know where to begin with this photo. I mean, I guess what I want to talk the most about is that dynamic, the visual dynamic between the target practice, right, which is the image of what appears to be a young teenage guy pointing a gun at me, the viewer,
Yes.
and that apparently traumatized, weeping, fearful young woman that he appears to be using as a human shield. So just that target itself is offering a particular orientation to understanding the issue.
It is interesting that it is like a Rorschach. I agree with that. And, I guess it is sort of like if you draw a line down the middle of the picture and you see the two sides and how they're speaking to each other, it also is driving this energy from both directions. And I see this as very much about trauma and about what happened and the response at the church. And then I also see it as unavoidably quite a commentary on schools and school shooting, because in some way that's arbitrarily interjected into the picture because of this really arbitrary and strange, target image. So, on the Christian side of it, or on the church side of it, that I just feel like that cross, that kind of burning cross, and with the screaming and with their ears covered, so they're not hearing, but at the same time, covered because of like the intense sound that's generated from firing weapons. It's sort of like this part of this is this primal scream, and the people on fire, and I relate that. I feel for that until I start to shift more to the right, and then the picture gets a lot more political.
Yeah, and to me too, there's again that moment of like, so where are we, the viewer, placed in this photo? And we're on the side of the guy with his back to us who is training, right? Who's engaged in firearms training, and that juxtaposition of the back of his T-shirt, which really, really performs the deep connection of Christianity and patriotism in the United States, right? The flag and the cross. The juxtaposition of him with the flag and the cross T-shirt and that target, I think, again, puts us in a position where we're asking, what is it that we're supposed to be doing here? And also, too, I mean, the one thing I do have to say, gender-wise, we have kind of on the left and on the top right,
Very
we have three male figures,
yeah.
And the female figure is a young woman who is needs to be apparently protected, right?
In pure
presumably
white.
Presumably by those who are engaging in this training. And so the position of a woman in the way this photo is framed is that women are to be protected or used as, subjects of violence, to be violated or protected. And like I said, really complicated, but a kind of condensation of so much about the gun debate.
When you look at the poster or the target, it's so strange that what happened was the shooting took place in a church, and then the photo, especially with the blackboard and the and the markers and the chair, is clearly situated in a school. So how do you make that transition? Where so in a way I feel like it's kind of an ad for weaponizing our schools when that's not even where the attack took place. And I also wanted to look up and see if the guy who was the killer, Devin Patrick Kelly, if this was actually him superimposed, and it wasn't, because he just looks a lot different. But how you transition to the whole to the school setting and weaponizing schools when this took place in a church, I think is also pretty heavy-handed. So
yeah, and it and then also the juxtaposition of that violence and the kind of hypermasculinity of the photo with the very delicate flowers in the background, right? So there's that kind of juxtaposition too, which I think connects to what you're saying, is that, is the culture being weaponized? And, it sort of, for me, raises the question of what is fragile, in a photo like this. All right, shall we move on to our last image? Let's do that. So this is our last photo for the week.
The photo was taken by Louis Palu for National Geographic. It won an award of excellence in the issue reporting picture story category. Louis has been working on this story for quite a long time. The title is called The New Cold War. The story description reads, a new Cold War is unfolding in the Arctic as countries militarize the Arctic Circle and make claims to geography and natural resources as the melting polar region is transformed by climate change. And the caption, at least the edited caption, reads, Canadian soldiers building a traditional Inuit igloo as an improvised survival shelter near a camp at the Crystal City training area in temperatures as low as 50 degrees below Celsius in Nunavut, Canada. This is on April 1st, 2018.
This photo for me is such a great example of how photography can bring you to places you will never go yourself, and it can show you things. And I say this as a Minnesotan, I know winter, but you know, photography can bring you places and introduce you to stories that how would you really understand the implications of this idea of this new Cold War, right? If you didn't have images to communicate that. And so to me, that's one of the things that I love about the series, in particular, the whole series is really interesting. This photo, you know, what hits me immediately is the kind of irony behind all of this, which is a new Cold War because the climate's warming.
Yeah.
So wrap your head around that for a moment, right? And then these photos,
if you can.
Yeah. And then these photos represent, you know, to kind of extend our conversation we were having earlier, the militarization of climate change in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so they are both these representations of this very difficult, shall we say, place to learn to live and work and move in, but also the militarization of an issue like climate change that a lot of political figures claim isn't happening. So, I mean, how do you picture that? And I think the way Palu does that here is just really remarkable.
Yeah. I think we're talking about, this made me think about actually, or maybe because I just saw First Man, but it made me think about the moon. Mm. And your point is a really interesting one of like places we never see. But this is also like the militarization of space when you think about space in a larger context. But at the same time, you know, there's so many interesting things going on in terms of details, like how the balaclava both connotes weather and terror. I think that that's so fascinating because, again, it's a kind of like another dislocation. But what Louis also is doing, playing against all of the narrative and politics and all of this, is doing amazing things in terms of, like, you know, aesthetically, you know, because the way that you see these beautiful, you know, kind of blurred, you know, I guess it's snow. And, you know, what is that? It's like, you know, it's kind of, it makes like a Christmas scene, but maybe it's kind of like, you know, kind of a radar vibe a little bit also. Also like the black and white and the inverse, you know, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And it's kind of, you know, ambiguous like that. I mean, I think he's just doing things. And then also like the texture of the blocks that form the igloo, you know, which almost like is like a kind of a hand grenade or something, if, you know, not that, you know.
Oh, that's interesting. Really, yeah. But yeah, I hadn't thought of that. But
it's really amazing the like texture and the aesthetics of this.
And it's also the kind of improvisational component to this photo is really interesting. Like on the one hand, it seems very posed, right? Like they're stopping and looking at him.
Like it could have won a portrait award.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's also kind of like the one guy on the right sort of got his block of snow, you know, like, you know, and they're clearly still building this igloo, right? Because like their heads stick out of it. You probably don't want that if you're trying to survive in the Arctic. So, and then there's also this kind of these chunks of snow behind that suggest maybe, you know, like pieces that didn't work out or that are going to be put on later, you know, and so there's this kind of in process element and then the snow. So it just feels like just a capture of a moment in time in that way that photography can, pardon
Yes.
my terrible pun, can freeze a moment in time.
Yes.
Um, that it's almost like, we say this, I say this like maybe too much sometimes, but it's almost like a narrative painting, where it's just this moment, a little snapshot of an event. And like the first photo, again, a very quiet image. And you can, because of the texture and because of the
Yes.
presence of the snow, you can almost feel how quiet it must be,
Mm. Mm. It really is a
And
process photo because, there's so many things we're on the road to in this, whether it's like in the process of completing the igloo or, this is sort of like, you know, uh, uh, it's like not like fiddling like Rome Burns exactly, but it's like, we're going to have this war and then climate change takes us out, while we're battling each other for, to get the resources. It's the process nature of this is extraordinarily ironic on all kinds of levels.
yeah, yeah, and that sense of what we're building, you can't necessarily entirely see either, right? So we wouldn't see it if he weren't there in the first place. But then, kind of what is behind this wall of snow, right? What are we doing quietly here at the top of the
Mm-hmm.
world? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, really, really interesting photo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so um, we want to encourage people to look at all of these, right? Because there are literally dozens and dozens of photo series and other kinds of uh, ways to access the group of photos, right?
Yeah, the Krantz and the Palus, like again, are both stories. This is one. These are one image we pulled out of a series that all speak as a group, and then it's usually sometimes it's hard to like give people the URLs orally, but the poi.org/76, which is the year, which year edition, but it's an HTTPS. But it's poi.org/76, and strongly recommend taking a look. It's really amazing work.
Yeah, and it's really it was fun to look at just a few of those images this week.
Yep.
Any other news or things for us, Michael, before we sign off for this week?
No, not really. I did some media this week on the New York Times story on
Oh yeah.
the iconic Vietnam photo. So we may be putting some of that up on the website, or you'll be seeing tons of it if you're following us on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, and if folks haven't had a chance to look at that investigative piece you did, they really, really should. And it's made a real difference. And it's also a really great example of how photography plays a really important role in how we remember and memorialize things, particularly war. And so that's a really important set of questions that you're taking up there.
All right.
All right. Well, we will be back next week with more chatting and more pictures, right?
Take care.